Good evening. Just doing a microphone check. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, type yes in the chat box, please. Hi. Okay, great. So the time is 6:30. I'm thinking I should give everyone a few more minutes just to log in. So I'll get started in a few minutes. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone that's joining tonight. And welcome to the live webinar entitled A Place for Everything, Practical Organizational Strategies for Preschool Teachers. My name is Teresa Kelley. I'll be your trainer tonight. Before we begin, I want you to take out a plain sheet of paper, and I want you to fold it in 4 squares. You will use this as your note-taking guide. I want you to type yes in the comments once you've gotten your sheet of paper and you folded it and you have your 4 squares. Then I will explain to you how to label each square. Awesome. So in your first square, I want you to label it activity. In your second square, I want you to label it as notes. In your third square, I want you to label it as questions. And your fourth square, I want you to label it as do now. I'll repeat that again. Your first square, label it as activity. Your second square, label it as notes. Your third square, label it as questions. And your fourth square, label it as do now. So that as we go through the slides, I want to encourage you to utilize this paper to organize your thoughts. You may want to refer back to this note-taking guide after the training. So before we get started, I just have a quick poll because I want to get a feel for who's on with me tonight. Let me get out the poll. So the first poll is going to ask you the question. I'll have to load it. Here we go. So the first question is asking, what age group do you teach? And you can just choose your answer or type it in the chat box. Awesome. Thank you for participating in that. It gives me some insight into who is participating tonight. So let's move on. So we all have chosen this profession called education, and specifically early childhood. And with that comes this thing we like to call teaching. For some, it's easy, and for some of us, it can be very challenging. Challenging because teaching is both a science and an art. We have to have both of these things, but sometimes we get caught up in the artsy, creative side of the profession, and we forget the foundation, which is the how-to, the planning, and organizing. When we do that, when we get all caught up in the artsy and creative side, and we get caught up in trying to balance all of it, then we tend to look like this. I know everybody's seen this meme floating around before, and it's pretty funny, but it pretty much describes us as teachers. We become very stressed out when we're out of balance, trying to balance our creative and our science side to the teaching. Type yes in the chat box if you feel like this sometimes. And let me just say that it's absolutely normal to feel stressed out, to feel tired as teaching, because a lot has been brought upon us in the profession. So tonight, I want to give you some simple and practical strategies to help you lessen some of this stress. How does that sound? Yeah, me too. I've been in the profession 17 years, and I've been at every stage that is on this meme. I've been broke, I've been tired, and I am definitely a teacher. So the way to a stress-free teacher life is being organized, having a set plan in place for every aspect of your day, from the beginning of the year to the end, from classroom to lesson plans, behavior, and most importantly, yourself, meaning taking care and organizing your mind. I also want to note that organization is a very personalized task. The tips and strategies you will hear me talk about during this series may or may not work for you. but my intent is to inspire you maybe to try something new. Here are a few of the organizational topics we will cover over the next few days. Tonight, we will talk about lesson planning. Next week, we will discuss organizing the learning environment. And for the final week, we will discuss personal planning. Now, because all three of these organizational items are closely related, we may review some of the topics during another session. So don't be surprised if you hear it again because they're very closely related. So let's get started. So we cannot expect our students to be calm and ready to learn if we as teachers are not calm and prepared ourselves. I hope you agree with that. We can all agree. But the good news is that being organized does not mean our classrooms must look like a magazine-worthy Pinterest board. Organization and planning is about being effective and efficient for both you and your students. The goal tonight is to have you leave with strategies that will assist you in making the task of lesson planning a little stressful and a little less complex. So I always like to start with making sure that we as humans, as people, are ready for the task at hand. Because if we are not focused, then our day with 10 or 20, 15 little ones will be, well, kind of hectic, crazy, and back to that stressful moment. And day in and day out, the profession calls for us to give to our students. But before that, we as teachers, we have to remember to give to ourselves. We need to organize our mind. We have to get our mind, our body, and our spirit right. We have to stay positive and believe in ourselves. So I have this little activity that I do with myself every single morning, every single day once I discovered it. And it's called doing affirmations. And affirmations are just simple, positive, specific statements that help you overcome self-sabotaging, negative thoughts. They help you visualize and believe and affirm in yourself. It helps you to make positive changes to your life and your career. If you can read some of these, some of them, usually self-affirmation statements start with I am, or I can, or I will. Um, I am a unique and special person. I can do this today. I'm going to have a great day today. Today is going to be a fabulous day. You can use self-affirmations, like I said, for yourself, just to get yourself ready in the morning, but also think about adding self-affirmations to your morning lesson with the kids, sort of like doing a pledge. So right now, I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to write down 3 affirmations. Remember, most affirmations start with I will, I can, I am, and it states something positive. So take a few minutes and write down 3 affirmations. And when you're done, I want you to just type one of your affirmations in the chat box. Thank you. I hope you're able to use those in the upcoming weeks. So here we have a little video. So now that we're ready and we believe that we can do this, let's go ahead and get started. But wait, we're talking about this thing called lesson planning. So I got this little video and it gives a quick overview of the simplicity of creating a lesson plan. I want you to note that in step 2, they use the word activity, but I would just change that word to theme. So when they get to step 2 and they start talking about an activity, just in your mind, change that to a theme. And let me just hit play. So I hope you enjoyed that little short video, and it gave you 5 quick, simple tips on what the lesson planning process should look like. So you're not overwhelmed with thinking about what the process will be. So we spend a lot of time with those little ones, 15, 5, 10, 15, 20 of them for some of us. So we need a map to help us as teachers help the children maximize their learning. But how do you do that? So it's time to plan. And planning is just simply looking and planning out what you're going to do, how are you going to do it, and when are you going to do it. And of course, we already know the why. If your school uses a commercial curriculum, then this phase might be as easy as that curriculum should have a scope and sequence. A scope and sequence summarizes what order themes of study or units will be taught within the school year. Now, if your school does not have a commercial curriculum, then you are free to lean more on that artsy side of the balance and develop your own. For example, we know that in the months of August and September, these are usually the themes for back to school or all about me. So you would just continue and plan out the rest of the year, maybe using a theme, or maybe in October you want to do a fall theme, in December you want to do winter theme. Just planning out month by month what not activities, but what themes, what units of study do you want to cover. So that is like the first step of the planning process. So the next question I have here when it comes to planning is I want to know what days of the week do you usually plan on? So let me pull that poll up. And here it is here. What day of the week do you usually create your lesson plans on? Do you create them on a Monday? Do you start planning on a Tuesday? Do you start planning on Wednesday? Do you start planning on a Thursday, or do you plan on a Friday? And we're just choosing one of those answers there. What day of the week do you usually start to plan on? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or over the weekend? Wednesday, okay. That's very surprising for me to see that some of us plan on a Wednesday, because typically what happens is that we plan on like a Thursday or a Friday. And when we do that, it leaves us little to no time to organize and gather the needed materials that we're going to need for the week to implement all of the activities and lessons that we want to do with the kids. So tonight, I want to give you a new routine, something different to think about. So I want you to think about starting your planning process on Monday and Tuesday for both days. And on Monday and Tuesdays, I want you to take these days to research and write out what you will do for the following week. Because remember, we're planning a week ahead. So, and I want you to correlate your activities to the standards and decide what materials you will need to execute these activities. I want you to use this time to make a list of everything you will need. Take your time, go through resource books to find activities that will be of the most interest to the children. I want you to plan out your homeschool connection activities. Plan out your conference, what day you're going to have a conference with the parents if needed. What items can you put in your centers that are going to be relevant to the new skill or the theme that you'll be teaching? So in this planning process between Monday and Tuesday, this should not be an individual or an isolated task. It should be a team effort. You know the old saying, two heads are better than one. So with that in mind, there are two types of planning strategies, and they should work cohesively. So taking your activity ideas and matching them to the standards or vice versa is what we call horizontal planning. How does your instruction match the current age appropriate standard? It requires you to be intimately familiar with what the kids will be expected to know and be able to do at various levels. At this stage of horizontal planning, this gives you an intentional purpose for your teaching. Vertical planning is another type of planning. And so basically with vertical planning, you're starting from what the children should already know, and you're going to build on that knowledge and or strengthen their skill set. And it should be a seamless flow between the age groups. So that's why it should be a collaborative team effort. So if you're a toddler teacher, you're working with the infant teacher and maybe the preschool teacher to see, what it is they should already know, what they need to know at your age level and where you need to take them. Remember to use your note-taking guide to take notes. Jot down any questions you may have. We'll have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar tonight. So, lesson plans are for you as the teacher to organize your daily activities among a common thread. Lesson plans are there to make you more effective and efficient as a teacher. At the very basic level, a lesson plan should include these 4 components. The objective, the activities, the materials, and the evaluation. The objective is your purpose. What do you expect the children to learn? Why are they there? You have to plan for something for them to do. What is it they're going to be doing throughout the day? And then when you think about the evaluation part, I'm not talking about the kids taking a test, because usually when we hear the word evaluation, we immediately think about a test. So I'm not talking about a test when I'm talking about evaluation. I'm talking about how are you going to determine if the children have mastered what you've taught. So you want to think of some type of independent work sample that the kids can create or do on their own that will show evidence that they know or have mastered the skill. If you're using a commercial curriculum, this part will probably be easy because it has a template for you to work from. Most commercial curriculums they're very scripted, and they come with all of the necessary tools that you'll need to implement that curriculum. But in the event that you don't have a curriculum, a commercialized curriculum at your school, there's no need to worry. You can Google lesson plan templates for preschools, or you can design your own. I personally would choose designing my own, as I know, and we all know that the lesson plans are for us as teachers. So to be able to maneuver each section the way that sees best suited for me will work better for me, because that's the type of teacher that I am, and it'd be easier for me to flow. So here's another poll question for you, and I hope you've been paying attention, and I'm sure you have. So the next question is, just a true or false question. Lesson plans allow you to be more effective and efficient. True or false? Lesson plans allow you to be more effective and efficient. True or false? Yes, very true. Let's remember that the lesson plan, the template, and everything that's on it is to guide us as teachers to maximize the learning process for the children. The lesson plans are not for the kids, they're for us. It's a guide, a roadmap to maximize and to guide the learning for the kids. Awesome. So we've talked about what to do on Monday, Monday and Tuesday, where you're going to begin your lesson planning process. You're going to start doing all your research. And then you're going to do some collaborative team planning during your horizontal and vertical planning. So now what do we do on Wednesday? So on Wednesday, once you've thought out your lesson plans, now you can begin to gather the materials for the plans that will include any copies, materials you would need for special activities. So if you're doing planner board activities, you want to gather all the pieces that you will need for that. If you're going to play a particular game, you want to go find where that game is, or if you have to create it, you want to give yourself time to be able to create it. So on Wednesday, it would be the day for you to do all of this. Pictured here, you see a lesson basket filled with all the materials needed for a lesson. So this basket, you can get these baskets now anywhere at the Dollar Tree. Target has an awesome dollar spot where you can get a basket. It doesn't have to be this particular basket, but any kind of basket, big enough that you can fit, a pretty large size book in it. And what you want to do is you want to label the basket as maybe your curriculum basket, like they've done here. You want to get a set of pocket folders with each day of the week and place them in your basket. And in the pocket folders is where you're going to put all of the materials that you're going to need for each day. So the games, if you're going to play a game on Monday, you're going to put that game in the Monday folder. If you're going to read a flannel board story on Tuesday, you want to put it in the Tuesday folder. If you're going to sing a song or read a book, you want to put those in the corresponding days. What doesn't fit inside the folders, you're going to put that in front of the pocket folder. So any like arts and crafts activities, sponges, tape, cotton balls, paint brushes, paints, all of that you will put in the front of the basket. And the purpose of the basket is to have everything in one place, everything nice and organized, so that you can focus on presenting the material rather than spending valuable time, teaching time, searching for the materials. And I know everybody, including myself, has been guilty of doing that. You have the lesson in your head and you know what you want to do, but now it's time for you to do the lesson and you need to go find the materials in order to do the lesson. So following this organizational lesson planning map and guide should help eliminate some of that disorganization. So take the time on Wednesday to gather all of those materials and put all of the materials inside of one basket for the week. I hope that makes sense. If not, please jot down your questions and I can hopefully clarify that for you at the end. So all of those pieces that you're gathering, if you make a lot of those games and flannel board stories, they can be kind of hard to keep track of. But with careful organizing, you will be able to easily access them year after year. This should help you save some money as well. And as teachers, as educators, there's always this debate on whether to use binders or whether to use file folders. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's a personal preference. It comes with just trial and error, deciding to do binders, trying that for a while, seeing if that works for you and your personality, or using the file cabinets. Me personally, when I was in the classroom, I used the file cabinets because for me, it was just easier to open a drawer and grab and go. But some other things to take in consideration is that binders, once you start filling those binders up with sheet protectors and all of the pieces and papers, it can become very bulky. And once it becomes very bulky, then it becomes very heavy. And then you also have to think about where you're going to store all those binders. If you look at the picture here on the slide, you see she has a 2-level shelf. And depending on your classroom or depending on the building, you may or may not have access to that type of storage unit. Also with file folders, you also want to think about space because you can see there's different types of filing storage systems, filing cabinets, so that you want to take into consideration as well too. But using the file folders, because it's inside of one drawer, it can be a little less bulky for that. So just some things to consider. So where do you get these ideas from? As teachers, we have to have a toolbox to pull from. Many used curriculums. Like I said, many schools have commercial curriculums like creative curriculum or the Wings curriculum, things like that. But remember that those curriculums are just a guide for you. They may be scripted, but they should just be a guide for you. Curriculums are good for those who are just starting and they don't know, how to teach. And so because of the script, it makes it a lot easier. You just turn the page and you read or you follow the directions. But it can also stifle your creativity. So for me, I was never a curriculum person. I always just like to just follow the scope and sequence of the curriculum, but then I was able to use my own creativity to devise my own lessons, my own materials. As long as I was teaching to the standard and doing my scaffolding planning, then I was okay. But in the event that you do not have a commercial curriculum, where do you get these ideas from, these activities from? So a lot of us have resource books, and we spend a lot of money on resource books. In fact, I know here in my house, I have boxes and boxes of resource books. But now with technology taking over, we can get a lot of activities online, which is really phenomenal. So I've given you here 4 online sites that you can pull some activities from. One being the PNC Grow Up Great. So if you just type in PNC Grow Up Great, just Google it, it should come up. And I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with Kid Vision Pre-K. We know that it offers those fabulous field trips, and it's already aligned to the standards, so that should help tremendously as well. And then we have education.com. Education.com, I believe, goes from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade. which is pretty awesome. And then there's this little known site called Teachers Pay Teachers. And so basically, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Teachers Pay Teachers, but it's an online website where basically teachers, everyday teachers like myself and like you, and they have created all of these lessons and activities on their own. And what they do, they're able to have their own digital store, online store through the website, Teachers Pay Teachers. And so if you go online and you just type in Teachers Pay Teachers, it'll take you to the website, you log in, and you're able to choose what grade level that you're looking for activity for. You can search by topic, you can search by subject, and then a plethora of things will pop up. Now, keep in mind that the middle word in this is pay, teachers. So you will have to pay for most of the activities that are on that line, on that website, but most of them are pretty inexpensive. And sometimes some of the teachers, they offer their materials for free. They'll give out a freebie as well too. So I encourage you to check out any of these websites to, if you don't have a commercial curriculum, check out any of these websites to help you with that, with your planning. You'll have to put a little more effort into your horizontal planning, so aligning it to the standards will take a little bit more effort, but should lessen your stress of trying to figure out what lesson or what activity I'm going to do. So I hope that was helpful. And I'll leave this up here for a little while so you can just jot those websites down. The PNC Grow Up Great Education.com, Teachers Pay Teachers, which I really encourage you to go and check it out if you've never heard of it, and maybe even upload and have your own store. And then Kid Vision Pre-K. So now we have another poll question, because I just want to get a feel for what you guys are learning. Let me just get back here to the poll. And this poll is just basically going to talk about the organization of the materials that we're going to use for our lesson plans. There it is. So the question reads, what are the most commonly used materials for organizing your lesson plans and the materials for your lesson plans? What are the most commonly used materials for storage containers, storage units used for organizing your lesson plans? Would it be binders and folders, bins and notepads, or OneNote? And I see we have some overachievers here, some quick answers. Yes, binders and folders are the tried and true two organizational units that teachers go back and forth using. So like I said, it's personal preference. You try which one out, try either one out, try them both out, and decide which one you prefer. So we talked about Monday. We know Monday we're going to take the time to research. We're going to collaborate with our team Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we're going to gather some materials that we're going to need to implement the lesson plan. So that leaves us for Thursday and Friday. So what happens on Thursday and Friday is that you're going to start gathering the materials that you're going to need for your centers. You're going to gather your themed materials. And you're going to think about changing out the materials in your centers. Materials in your centers area should rotate out based on the skill or the theme that the children are learning for the week. So besides those permanent staples in your centers, you want to have some activities that directly relate to the lesson or the theme that you're going to be teaching for the week, so that the children can practice independently in those centers. and kind of learn and review on their own on what you've already taught. So your centers should never look the same throughout the whole year. They need to be switched out. And like I said, it should be switched out based on what the kids are learning. So you're going to take time to do that on Thursday and Friday. So as you can see, if you wait to start your planning on I know somebody mentioned there on Wednesday, if you wait till Thursday and Friday to start your planning, then you will be stressed out trying to get all of this stuff ready for Monday morning, because we know Monday morning we have to be up and we have to be ready and on the go because the kids are ready and on the go. So this taking it out and spreading it out should help you tremendously. So once you've done your lesson plans, and you implemented the lessons. So now it's going to come a time where you have to start gathering samples of how the children have mastered. So this is that evaluation piece of the component of the four components of the lesson plan. This is that last piece. So how do you do that? How do you keep track of all of that paper, the work samples? Where does it all go? So there's two examples that I like best. Once again, the file folders, hanging file folders, works great. And then there are these plastic envelopes, they call them, and you can get them at Office Depot, you can get them at Target, but most, or what's the other store? Staples. But most likely I would go to an office supply store to buy them because you most likely need to use them in bulk. And with either one of those, they are very durable and should last you over a few years. And basically what you want to do is just take some work samples of the children's best work, and you want to file them away so that when it's time to talk with parents, maybe quarterly, weekly, however you choose to do it at your school, then you can just pull out this folder, pull out this envelope, and pull out the work that the children have done to show them. Now, how you determine which work sample to keep or send home, once again, there has to be a balance. You can't keep all the good stuff and send all the bad stuff home. So it has to be a balance. But most importantly, you want to keep evidence of how the students are meeting the standard and progressing developmentally. You may even want to try having conversations with the kids about what their best work is and what they choose to keep to talk to their parents about when their mom or dad or their caregiver, grandma, auntie, whoever comes to the school, who they want to show, what they want to show to their caregiver, their best work. So I believe this is our last question. And let's see what you guys have been learning. Let me just go to the poll here. So a basic lesson plan should include how many components? A basic lesson plan should include how many components? 6, 4, or 10? What's the magic number? So I hope you chose 4, because that would be the correct answer. 4 would be the correct answer. A basic lesson plan should include 4 components. And remember, those 4 components include the objective, the activities, the materials, and the evaluation. So that's 4. The objective, the activities, the materials, and an evaluation. So we've come to the end, the conclusion of the presentation tonight. I hope you've gotten some strategies that you would be able to implement right away. You jotted them down in your do now section. But right now, maybe you have some questions that you wanted to get answered, some clarification that you needed. So now would be the time to ask those questions. And I will just give you a few minutes to do so. How do I juggle it all? Well, I organize. I follow this system that I presented to you all tonight when I was in the classroom, because it can be overwhelming and we can become that stressed out meme. So I had to develop a plan for myself. So I developed this system where I was planning starting from either that Monday or that Tuesday, planning for the upcoming week. Yeah, we all feel like we don't ever have enough time to plan. So that's why, just starting early will help out in that. If you wait till the end of the week and you're planning for Monday of the following week, you are going to be stressed and you won't have enough time. But if you employ some of these strategies that I've given you tonight, starting on Monday, or Tuesday at the very latest, just mapping out, going through those resource books, like I said, because that part right there is just the most time consuming part. Going through the resource books, going online, trying to find those lessons, trying to align it to those standards, looking at those standards and trying to figure out, I've taught this standard, now I need to teach this standard. It can all become very consuming. So if you just start early, it will eliminate some of that time that you don't have. You will gain more time and you will be less stressed. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions. But in the event that you do have more questions after the webinar is over, you can feel free to connect with me on social media at Kidtastic, and that's Kidtastic with two Ks, one at the beginning and one at the end. So I want you to think about fantastic, but I'm Kidtastic. And like I said, that's with two Ks, one at the beginning and one at the end. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm trying to conquer Twitter, but I haven't gotten there yet. So, I see another question. Is it normal to plan all weekend? Is it normal? For most teachers, it is. Is it best practice? Absolutely not. I would not recommend to any teacher to plan over the weekend. Well, at least not the whole weekend anyway. Your weekend should be for, remember at the beginning of the presentation when I talked about organizing yourself? Your weekend should be spent for you time. And we'll talk about that at the on the third webinar, is how to organize our lives so that we have time for every aspect of our lives, for our family, for our schoolwork, for our work. Some of us may be in school taking classes, and then you have work on top of that. So it can almost become impossible to plan over the weekend. But to answer your question, like I said, is it normal to plan all weekend? It is the norm for most teachers, but it is not best practice at all. So once again, I encourage you to, like I said, start early. Start on Monday or Tuesday at the latest with your planning out your materials, your lesson activities, and gathering all the materials that you're going to need. And trust me, by Friday, you will leave out of that building with a smile on your face, not because it's Friday and it's the weekend, but because you know that you're prepared and you're ready to start Monday morning and you don't have to get there extra early Monday morning to do all of that gathering because it's already done. So, is it normal? Yes. Is it best practice? Absolutely not. Do not recommend it to be planning on the weekend. Do it during the week. So, like I said, if you have any questions after the webinar, you can contact me on social media and just ask your question online, and I will answer it at Kistastic. And I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. And I will see you next week, where we'll be talking about organizing the learning environment, which is a whole nother beast. So I'll be giving out some great strategies and some tips for organizing the learning environment, talking about how to design your classroom, some more storage strategies, and some cool things that I'm sure we don't normally think about when we're thinking about the learning environment and how to organize it. I won't tell it all. So just know that it's going to be a surprise. So make sure you join us next week when we talk about that. And remember, the final week, we'll talk about personal organization. It has been my pleasure tonight talking with you and presenting this lesson on lesson planning organization. And good night.